Do you think that this is a 4-year hiatus from common sense and common decency? And if we just got through it, that things will return to normal and we just go on with business as usual? Well, if that's your view, then that leads you to cowardice. But if you are of the view that this very idea of Trumpism or MAGAism or whatever you want to call it is a real threat to what the country is, what it stands for, what it wants to be, what it aspires to be, then this is a daddy, what did you do during the war moment?
Hey, James, right now it looks like Trump is riding high. I'm across the pond in London, and the local newspapers, and to the extent they talk about the American situation, say Trump is winning everything. And on the surface, he is. He got a tariff deal with the EU and with England. He seems to be forcing others to bow to his wishes on tariffs. He got his big, beautiful bill through. The economy for the second quarter was better than the first quarter. He got that judge, Emil Bove, confirmed by a 1 vote margin in the Senate. So it looks like Trump is really, really riding high. I think it's pretty much a Prague Spring. Number one, you don't find any Republicans this summer back home talking about the big, beautiful bill. Mike Johnson sent them home so they wouldn't have to talk about Epstein. They don't want to talk about the big, beautiful bill anyway, or they certainly don't want to talk about Medicaid. And I think those economic numbers are a bit of an illusion. I think that businesses, we've been told by people that we respect, are buying inventories, and they are stocking up in inventories and supply chain in anticipation of the tariffs causing problems, which they will later. So I don't think it's going to be so good. And as for Emil Bove, that is such a horrendous choice that really I think it raises questions about a number of those other Republican senators. Tom Tillis said he's retiring so he was a free man, and then he votes for this guy who he knows is eminently sleazy and unqualified. Dave McCormick told Pennsylvanians, yeah, I'm with Trump, but I'm an independent thinker. Bullshit. Because that third district represents Pennsylvania too. So I think there's a lot of things that Trump is doing now that are going to come back to haunt him later.
Well, let's go back to the big, beautiful bill. According to the story of Politico, they got a memo sent out by the NRCC, I guess, National Republican Congressional Campaign Committee, or whatever it is. And they told them to run on it, but they'll have town halls. And if I were the Democrats, I'd say, look, why don't we have a campaign about issues this time? We always talk about we have campaigns about personalities. Is it one of these rare moments where Republicans and Democrats agree on the topic, and that is the big, beautiful bill good or bad? That is an argument that Democrats cannot lose. Okay? They can't lose it. This is what the national Republicans are urging them to run on. And this is a rare time in American politics that we have an agreement on what the number one issue should be. And I think we ought to seize this memo. I think that now the memo tells them don't go to town halls, which is kind of funny. I think you can make something out of that. If I were running in like the Pennsylvania 3rd District you just mentioned or something like that, I'd have a town hall every 10 days. All right, and keep inviting him and keep talking, get every effect that the big, beautiful bill would have on whatever congressional district you're in. And it's going to be monumental, not even to mention the increased costs that you're going to have to fund all of this. This is a really good opportunity for Democrats to look big and talk about something that really, really matters to people.
Yeah, I agree. And I looked at a couple Republicans, principally J.D. Vance, who are trying to go out and sell the big, beautiful bill. He was in Pennsylvania, but there were a couple others too. You know what? There's only one part of that bill, James, that he didn't mention. He failed. He talked about tax cuts for tips, tax cuts for seniors, and tax cuts for overtime. Didn't mention that most of the big tax cuts went to the affluent. But he forgot in campaigning for the big, beautiful bill to mention Medicaid, a $1 trillion cut in Medicaid. Of course, they say, no one's going to get really hurt by that. Okay. I agree with you. Join it. It's a great issue.
Yeah, and you got all kinds of other issues. I mean, we know the veterans issue really has some punch to it. Look at cuts to the weather bureau. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff, and there's stuff that might affect individual states and to agriculture or something like that even more. But there's just no way that we have an election about this that we don't win the election comfortably. And they're going to talk about tax. Whenever as soon as they say tax cuts, you say, yeah, 77% go to people making over $250,000 a year. Why don't we get real tax cuts for real people? And but yeah, I just think this is a winner issue. I've always thought that, and I think they've given us a rare opportunity to really engage.
Yeah, and the only slight difference I have with you is I totally agree on the Democrats. I think the Republicans are going to belatedly realize this, and they're going to start talking a lot more about illegal immigrants, about trans women playing in men's sports, or trans men rather playing in women's sports, and all the other distractions. Because they, over the long run, they can't keep talking about this bill and not lose.
Well, I just don't think that. I think at the point you're going to look silly if you go to trans stuff. Okay, that I think that idea has like come and gone. I think the Democrats realize they're not going to say anything stupid on this again. It's all worn out. I mean, my God, man, we're talking about 1/2 of 1% of the people in the United States. Where this affects every person living.
Yeah,
So,
if it's that
and
big,
I'm
right?
not going to have a campaign over bathrooms.
Well, they're looking. You may well be right. They're looking for distractions. They'll look for
There,
something
look,
else.
I know, and,
Yeah,
and and
yeah,
why don't you pay attention to what your leadership said in Washington and talk about the big beautiful bill? I mean, you got
right,
every opportunity to segue or pivot from this or whatever you want. Just don't let them take you there. They're going to try anything they can, but don't let them go there.
right.
Don't let them go there. And the public is with you.
James, another story, and I hope it doesn't happen. But there are uh, seemingly very credible reports that Harvard may be willing to settle with the administration and pay as much as what's the figure they use? $500 million. That would be a tragedy because if they do, if Harvard capitulates, it would be, it's like Frankfurt University in 1933. That was the most prestigious German university. And once Hitler beat them down and they started to cave in, it affected every other university. If Harvard caves on this, no university is safe. There's no case that Trump can make on this. And it would really be an act of cowardice. And I don't care, how much their precious $54 billion is earmarked for various causes. They could get through a couple years with sacrifices. So I don't know that they're going to, but if they do, I think it's just an absolute scandal.
So this boils down to a fundamental question. What's your view of current America, of the Trump administration? Do you think that this is a 4-year hiatus from common sense and common decency? And if we just got through it, that things will return to normal and we just go on with business as usual? Well, if that's your view, then that leads you to, well, I'll compromise with them. Is that going to last long? I got an obligation to my shareholders. I got an obligation to my faculty of students. I got an obligation to this and that. If that's your view, then cowardness is the appropriate response. But if you are of the view that this very idea of Trumpism or MAGAism or whatever you want to call it is a real threat to what the country is, what it stands for, what it wants to be, what it aspires to be, then this is a daddy, what did you do during the war moment? If that is the view that history will have, Davis Polk, Harvard, Paramount, the whole thing is going to look treasonous. Now, my view is the second view. All right. I think this is a utter threat to the country that has been built until this point. I think it threatens everything. And I think the only acceptable response is to be as vigorous in the opposition as you can possibly be. But just so you know, Harvard, I think you're in a daddy, what did you do during the war moment.
Yep, yep. And the small example we have, all those big New York law firms that caved look a hell of a lot less attractive than firms like Wilmer Hale and Perkins Coie and those firms that stood up and are winning against Trump. They may lose a little bit of business short term, but in the long term, I think I want to be represented by a law firm that cares about principles. And I think that this is a showcase for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the law firms are one example, but by the companies, the everything else, and the universities. I mean, and you look to these universities as great American institutions. Number one in the world. People come here, and you expect something more out of them. I have greater expectations of elite universities than I do of elite law firms. So therefore, they disappoint me a lot more.
Well, I hope they don't disappoint you, James. I'm afraid they might,
I
though.
think they will. I
Yeah.
just, it's always this. Look, we had to make a financial decision here. We did what we thought was in the best interest of the university, of its students, faculty, administrators. Well, I guess in all of you with Frankfurt University in Germany in 1933, I guess you did the pragmatic thing, didn't you? But no one views you very good in history. And I look at it again. It just boils down to how big of a threat you think this administration is.
Yeah. James, we're going to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein Donald Trump saga with our great guest, Judd Legum, in a few minutes. But anything else particularly on your mind?
Yeah, a couple of things is I read all the stories, and to the extent they're accurate, the Dems are falling apart, the Dems are disarray. They have a 32% approval rating. They got this, they got that. Okay, that's one side of the story, and that's an often told story. And the truth of the matter is, well, to that extent, it's true. Uh, Roy Cooper announced for U.S. Senate state of North Carolina. Now, we know Governor Cooper. He's been on the show. We're great admirers of his. He's not a national figure in that sense. He's certainly not a ideological favorite of any branch of the party. I mean, I say that his governing style of philosophy is, very pragmatic. He raised $3.4 million in 24 fucking hours, most of it in donations of $100 or less. Now think about that. Think about that. Then I start looking at some of the polls and I'm starting to measure voter enthusiasm. That's one thing that we've learned over the years. That number matters. That's a number that really matters. I saw it. It's like the Democrats are 20 points more enthusiastic than the Republicans about voting. Now, the off-year election is fall of 26, but that's a big ass number. And the third thing is, I don't know if we're going to be able to count as high as Spanberger's going to win in Virginia.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people are ready. I've been through a lot of cycles. I've been through cycles that I knew we were going to lose. Everybody has. But boy, when you lose it and you look at the size of it, you go, oh, God. And I think that's what we're going to be faced with. That's what I really do. So I see low approval ratings for the Democratic Party. I see high enthusiasm. I see people, small donors, which is a good measure of energy around the country, and I see winning special elections everywhere.
And Trump,
Right.
Trump, you know,
So I I see $100 donors stepping up, understanding where the country is, what the importance of this, and unfortunately, I see Harvard University shrinking by the second. By the second. Now, a lot of people in this country understand the threat we faced with. I believe that.
well, you're so right. It's a threat that's not going to go away. I could not
No,
agree more.
it's going to get worse.